Hi, this is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Wherever you find us, whether it's a video on YouTube or on your favorite podcast platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms where I give you a heads up about upcoming shows and which date and time they will be aired. If you go to MiamiGhostChronicles.com, you can find links to the shows, MP3 files which you can download, or links to your favorite platform like iTunes, Spreaker, SoundCloud, and all other major sources. You can find information for upcoming and past talk show appearances as well as new book projects at MarlenePardo.com. You can also purchase books and merchandise there. And you can visit my author page on Amazon at Marlene Pardo Pellicer. Due to popular demand, I'm narrating my True Believer stories that I've collected throughout the years in a new series called Supernatural Storytime. You can find links at supernaturalstorytime.com. If you are into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate some of those at Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If you would like to read noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird, you can visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at MiamiGhostChronicles.com. I do want to thank you all for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi everybody, this is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, Stories of the Supernatural. How's everybody doing? Good, I hope. I'm doing really well. So you can tell I'm a little bit sweaty because, again, it's hot. I mean, really hot and steamy here in South Florida, as you all know. And the kind of weather most people get maybe in August, we get it in April and May and June and stuff like that. But otherwise, it's great. Very hot, very humid. Typical South Florida weather. But anyway, let me tell you a little bit about the guest that we have here today. I'm very excited to welcome Dr. Mary Barrett. Now, she is out of Lexington, Tennessee, and this lady, talk about, you know how you hear about the Renaissance man? This is a Renaissance woman. She's a spiritual reader, a consultant, paranormal investigator, ordained minister. She's a doctor of divinity, a Reiki master. She's also master hypnotist, master life coach, master NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. She's an author. She's worked on missing person cases. Of course, she performs weddings and has helped many people with life coaching. She also has books, classes, videos. She is also a private investigator. So believe me, we have got plenty to speak to Dr. Mary about. But let's start with a question that I always start with, and you know what that is. First of all, let me welcome her. How are you doing today, Mary?
Hi, I'm doing great. How are you?
Great, fantastic. Anyway, and all my audience always knows this is the question that I always ask all my guests was, how did you end up getting involved in this field, especially as an adult? Was it a childhood experience or something that just developed later on as an adult?
I believe I've always had the abilities to do what I do, and they just kept accumulating. And I can go back as far as a kid, especially when I was 14 years old when my dad died. But I have always had the abilities. I didn't always recognize them because I did not grow up in a psychic medium home, but I recognized them. As a matter of fact, a friend of mine recognized it before I did. So
why? Because you were...
interesting.
Was it something along the lines of clairvoyance, or was it that you were seeing some type of entities? What kind of experiences were you having?
Well, the first one I could actually remember, I was 14 years old, and I know there was more younger ones, but I really haven't dug that deep yet. But
okay.
When I was 14 years old, I was in a classroom in 8th grade, and for some reason I would keep getting up on my feet, running to the bathroom, and throwing cold water on my face and not knowing what was wrong. And I would come back to my room, and I would do it again and do it again. And it was like, gosh, probably about 1:45. And then we got out at 2:20, and my mom and the neighbor was waiting for me. And my mom said, well, maybe we should take you to the doctor and get a B12 shot. Now, back then, they always gave B12 shots for
Right,
everything.
yeah, I know, right, yeah.
Yeah, so I went to the doctor's, and the doctor was on the phone, and then he got off the phone, and he just sat there, which was really weird to me. And he told me that my father had died, and that explained my anxiety and my not being able to sit still and feeling like I was going to pass out and all this other good stuff.
So,
and then
the doctor was the one that broke the news to you?
Yeah, my mother didn't know how to break the news.
Oh my God. Okay, I was about to say, I guess, you know what, and I don't blame her. I hate to say this, but God, that must have been a difficult thing to do.
Well, it was really, really weird because right before my mother found out, I mean, this all happened within like 3 hours.
Okay.
My mother was sitting on the floor polishing our chrome table set we had. And back in the 70s, that's what you had.
Yes.
And she was talking to my father. He was sitting in the chair, and, where my mother was working, and they talked about things, and she never did tell me what they talked about. She told me it was between him and her.
Right.
And then the phone rang, and it was my stepmother. She had a collect call to my mother. My mother hung up on her because my mother knew. So then finally my stepmother called again, and my mother finally answered the phone. And she told my mother that about a week and a half ago, my father was killed in an accident about a week ago. And what happened is he had gone deer hunting with a friend in North Carolina and with my uncle. And they all went their separate ways. They came back. They noticed the driver had been drinking, and he was drunk, and they didn't want him to drive. Well, he insisted on driving anyway. So they were coming down the mountain in Morganton, North Carolina, and the guy lost control of the truck.
Oh, my God.
They went over a 100-foot embankment, and my father was under the truck when all was said and done, and my uncle and the other guy never even had a scratch on them.
You mean your dad was the only one that got hurt, that he died in that entire accident? Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. He fell out, and when he fell out, he rolled down the hill, and the truck landed on top of him.
Oh, boy.
So
he had already been, basically, he had already died, about 10 days before you guys actually found out, is what you're saying, right?
Well, he died on the 4th of December, and we found out on the 9th of December.
Okay, but still it was like a week.
Yeah.
Wow, my God. But your mom knew, so...
Well, my mom knew like an hour before I did.
But your mom knew something was up. It sounds like she was aware that...
Oh, yeah. I didn't make it clear my mother and father were divorced and he was remarried, but anyway...
Well, no, when you said your stepmother and everything, I kind of got that idea that... And when you said that delay, it sounded, I said, this was...
My mother got the call from my stepmother about 10 after 1 in the afternoon.
Wow.
So right after she got that call, I started getting all kinds of feelings. And to tell you the truth, I hate the death feeling because, you know somebody's dead, but you don't know who. And it was really bad. But after I had went home, I went to the doctor, and the doctor told me, and I started screaming. And, 14-year-old doesn't know what's going on. It was a big shock. And even the people in the office was like, what's wrong with her? Because they all knew me, and they knew that, I got a shot. I didn't scream, whatever.
Right.
But I went home after getting a double sedative, and it didn't even affect me. But I went home, and I looked in the mountains, and I saw a cloud that was just in the pure green mountains, just a white spot that looked like a cloud, and I had such peace come over me. And ever since then, my dad has been my spirit guide. He's been my daughter's. He consulted comforted my daughter when she was almost hit by a really bad car accident. and he's been around. My grandkids have seen him, and
Really? Wow.
so that
So he
started
visits,
it.
he checks in on the family, huh?
Oh yeah. And other times, like, I never really paid too much attention to it. My son would skip school, and next thing I know, I'd tell my mother, "Hey, let's go for a ride." And we'd bump into my son and his friend skipping school. And his friend would say, "How in the heck does your mother always know when we skip school?" I'd always be thrown in their path,
Oh,
But
boy.
yeah,
Like,
it's been an interesting journey.
I bet. It was like, we're just going to skip school, but you're not going with us because somehow or other your mother always knows. That's good.
Yep. Yep. My kids all know. They usually come to me, "Okay, Mom."
Yeah, right. I was going to say, it's like, might as well be honest up front. But so here you go. You had this event at 14, which, my God, it's adolescence. It's like, wow. I mean, it's difficult at any age, but I think especially at that age, it's very, very difficult. So what happened? How did that affect you? Did you shut down for a while, or how did you, I guess, go into adulthood and get more involved in this field?
Well, things just started happening, and I really blew a lot of it off because I didn't know. Okay. And then when I was in my 30s, my neighbor said to me, "Go buy yourself a pack of tarot cards." And it blew me wide open, and I didn't need any kind of tools whatsoever. Mm-hmm. I could sit here and tell you exactly, I can either do, missing persons, describing where the person is at. I could do telepathic, whatever. Wow. I'm really pretty good at what I do.
That's fantastic, because sometimes it does happen that way, where people, when I say that life gets in the way, you've had these experiences as young, but then we get busy living, and things like that get pushed aside until one day, almost as like if the timing is right.
Well, we were in Germany, and my husband was in the military. We were in Germany, and we had Desert Storm going on, and I told them, I said, "Look, if we don't go and get that settled over there now, in 10 years, our sons are going to be back over there." Okay. Well, it was 1991, and then 2000, and we were back over there again.
Yep.
So my predictions were there, except, I just blew them off. But I had, it was really weird. I had my friend, and this was my first missing person. Okay. My friend, actually she was a client. She called me up and she says, "Mary, my granddaughter's missing. I need your help." So I described right where the girl was at. So she was working with the police in Oklahoma and private investigator and bounty hunters trying to find this girl. Well, when she told them all what I said, they said, "Get her out here now." Okay. So I went out there, and they took me to the area they thought the girl was in. I said, "Yeah, she's right here." She's like within the block.
And was she a runaway, or were they afraid that she had been abducted?
No, she was a runaway. They knew it.
Okay.
She took off with her boyfriend. He was hiding her.
Wow.
And I was like right within the block of right where she was at. She was, you can't see through houses, but you know where they're at. Mm-hmm. And I pointed out a couple of houses, and she was in one of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me tell you something. They sometimes kids don't know what they put their parents or their families to when they do stuff like that. I'm telling you.
Well, there was more to it, and I really can't say too much about the subject, but I ended up coming home and then going back there and putting her under hypnosis to get the reason why. And child services were involved, and she, yeah, it was a mess. It was a total disaster.
So what, there was a history of child abuse or something else along those lines?
I really...
Okay, don't worry. Enough said. I understand better than you think.
Yeah.
So you came to the rescue in more ways than one, in other words.
Yeah, I came home, and then a day later had to turn around and go right back there because children's services and the police and stuff wanted me to put her under hypnosis and record it all, and that's what we did.
Okay. Well, let me tell you, yeah, and I know it can get kind of crazy. As far as when they behave like that sometimes there is more to it than just being, like what they call a teenager, especially when you're talking something as extreme as running away. Yeah, sometimes you have to yourself, why is this kid, I'm not going to tell you, sometimes they do it for no good reason in the sense of there is, but it's always good to find out what is going on behind the scenes, in other words.
Exactly. And I'm a big believer. I'm a master hypnotist, so I'm a big believer in hypnosis.
Oh, I am too. So that's why when I said I understand perfectly well what you mean as far as, and a lot of people have, I think, a little bit of preconceived ideas that are in error about hypnosis, okay, and things like that. And yeah, it's very useful at times like that. Especially if you're talking maybe events that were traumatic or painful.
Exactly.
Human beings, that's what we do to survive, to keep our sanities. We bury them. But they're still there.
Yeah, and I've had some rape victims and, other people that have been hurt in this world, but I've also had people in past lives that they have carried some stuff over that we have gone into the back. And I have some YouTubes up there where I did a 75-year-old woman that was afraid of fire trucks, and she kept calling them engines and find out why until I put her under. And she'd been killed by an Indian back in the 1800s. And now she goes, now I know why I was so afraid of fire trucks.
Wow.
Just because they were called engines.
Right, so, exactly. And people think, but the mind is really weird that way. Especially when you're fearful. How's that? Especially when we're fearful.
Well, I had one guy tell me, I did this on live radio in Pennsylvania. He said it was like one side of your mouth is saying something, and then the other side of your mouth and brain are saying, why are you saying that? Right. So yeah, it's interesting, and I love my jobs, all of them.
Yeah, well, let me tell you something. Us human beings, we're very interesting. Simple, complex at the same time, but very interesting as far as what the mind is capable of. And then, of course, there's also the spiritual component that sometimes is not addressed. How's that? And I want to say it. Sometimes when people act erratically, they're medicated, and that's not always the answer, because there's something going on at a spiritual level that no drug is going to take care of.
See, and that's what I wanted to say also, is that a lot of women, doctors blame the uneasy feelings and the anxiety all on PMS.
I know.
And that was my problem growing up. Oh, you're just PMSing. Right. Well, bull crappers, it was my psyche trying to tell me things.
Sure. And let me ask you, you tell me, I don't know if you've had the same experience. For example, I would have a client come in for, when I say weight control, usually what we would address is, let's say, choosing the right foods, okay, or whatever, or, going commitment to the gym. And it would develop that sometimes weight problems were just a symptom caused by something else. You see what I'm saying? And it would, and they wanted some time, and they kind of recognized it, And I said, we can't throw the kitchen sink in at everything, but I'm going to say that a good portion of the clients I had, unless there was something organic, a lot of their weight problems or inability to follow through, let's say with going to the gym or whatever it is that they had, walking, there was a deeper layer under there.
Yeah.
That was really, that's really what we needed to address. But I had to take it slower, and it was like, I'm not doing therapy. We're not doing therapy. I can only hypnotize you to address certain things. But it was like, almost like what you said, when you layer pack a little bit, and of course they become more at ease around you. You know what I'm saying? Especially if they have no prior relationship with you, and they feel more comfortable, and then things start coming up, and it's like, okay, but we got to do this slow.
Exactly. And what I try to do is I try to make them feel like I'm their new best friend.
Right.
I sit there and I talk to them and get them comfortable, and then they feel good enough to go under.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had very good success rate, except for one police officer that would not give up control.
Oh,
but
one of
other
those.
than that, yeah. Well, when I was going to put him under, he was armed, so he put his gun way.
Oh my God! Please stop! I have to laugh because I was going to say I had the same experience. One time I was going to do a police officer, and all of a sudden I see him, and he's going somewhere, and I was like, "Where are you going?" He goes, "Oh, I'm going to go get my gun." And I was like, "Where do you think you're going? Where do you think I'm sending you?" It's like, you're going to take the gun. What? Like they kind of think like you're going to beam them to another dimension. That is great because. Yeah.
I did an event, a past life regression event using hypnosis, and all of them were police officers.
Oh
mainly.
My God, that must have been a long day.
Well, it wasn't that bad, but I had one guy. He was built like a house, tall and, really built. And I'm like, oh, shoot. So I had him sit across from me, and then when I had him under, I had one police officer on each side of him and one over on me in case he knocked the table over or he came flying over. And I'm telling everybody else, get back. But he was good. He was good as gold. He went under, told me some stuff, came right back out of it, and it was great.
Well, people sometimes are under the misconception that you kind of forget or go to sleep or whatever, and it's not. You're there. You're aware of what's being said and done. You're just really super relaxed, but people kind of think that you go fall into the well of oblivion when you're hypnotized, and that's not the case at all. On the contrary. But yeah, I've had that experience with those super analytical types, like you said, that they overanalyze everything so much, and then of course the ones that I don't know, their imagination runs away with them, and they kind of think like, where do you think is going to happen here? It's like, what?
Well, a lot of times when I put them under past life, when they want to know things, we go ahead and I get them all their information, like their names, their ages, where they were, how they died, and they can go up and look it up and see if they can find out. Right. We had one girl, her mother and I grew up in the same area, and they moved out. But this one girl had actually, it was a boy and a girl that were kidnapped by this guy, and it was a kid. And this girl I put under described everything. She had no way of knowing. It was even before she was born.
Wow.
So, and they had moved out of the area, so she didn't know anything. She was the girl that was kidnapped.
What?
Yep. She knew way too many details, and she told me about her and her brother doing this and that, and she had been the girl that had been kidnapped.
Wow. And once she became aware of that, how did she handle it?
She was okay. She goes, "Oh, that's pretty cool." Her mother and I, the minute the girls started naming the street and where they were going,
right,
and who took her, and where they were found and where they were put. I mean, she named details that there was no way she could have known this. Yeah. And some of it wasn't even released to the public. I just happened to talk to the mother of the kidnapped children, and I knew some inside information. And when she came out with all this, it was like, holy cow.
And was she related, or did she live in the same area? Did she have any type of connection?
Nope.
Nothing.
This was before she was born. This was way before she was born.
But there was no connection. You know how sometimes people live in the same area, or their families, or their friends. So in other words, there was no.
Well,
okay, that's so interesting.
Okay, let's put it this way. She was. This happened in 1981.
Okay.
And she was born in the 1990s.
Wow.
And she had moved out of the area, and she did not know anything because it was, it was done and over with. Nobody ever even talked about it after that.
Right. I know what you mean. Did anything?
So she didn't know anything.
Did anything become resolved for her, or anything did she ever say, "Hey, after I had this experience"?
What do you mean?
Because sometimes people have phobias, or they have dreams, nightmares, or they have certain feelings. There was nothing there for her. It was just like seeing a movie, in other words.
Yeah, she described the name of the streets and everything that she was born in that area, but then she was taken out of that area, and she didn't know. She told us where the kids were taken from and named the streets they traveled to get to the place that he killed them and hid them.
Wow. That's incredible.
She took us down the route. Yeah.
Incredible. Have you had, Mary, have you run across any, with the hypnosis, since you do past life regression, anything with spiritual attachments?
Yeah, and I've taken care of that. There's been a few, but not really bad. I mean, demons and all this is being overused.
Well, no. And by this, and I totally agree with you. I think it's overdone. I'm talking spiritual attachments as in sometimes, like, dead people, like humans. No, nothing, so we don't have to go out there. And I totally 100% agree with you that I think that it's overdone for the shock and awe factor, which
exactly.
It's like, that I think that's, honestly, I think it's very, very rare, despite what people was portrayed out there.
Yeah, and I want to touch on this for a minute because I have, this one client, I finally had to actually block her. She called me up and told me she had a lot of weird things going on in her house.
Okay.
So I went to her house and I did the saging, the cleansing, and the closing of the portals. I did all that. Well, then she started calling me up and telling me that the people are coming up from her yard.
Oh.
There's a bunch of people in her yard. There's hundreds of people walking around. And I mean, I can't say it's not true.
Right.
And I won't say it's not true. But I also think that the woman needed to get a little bit of a reality check.
Yeah.
Because I think what happened is a lot of people are watching the shock and awe.
Yes.
With these demons. And now they're bringing them into their own homes.
Oh, absolutely.
There's something new.
They're absolutely. Well,
I have gone into homes before, and I'm like, there's something here. And I'm really good at being able to find portals and feeling things and stuff like that. Right. But this woman was totally, to her, just to get worse and worse and worse and worse, and there was nothing there. And I had already been to her house and did everything that I could do. I did everything I did work on her. I did work on her husband.
Right.
And when I left, everything was settled and gone, and everything was. And then she started coming up with this other stuff, and I'm like,
you know what? One of the things I tell people is, I tell, especially, and you do have people that have mental illnesses. This
exactly.
Believe me, I mean, I've worked as a paranormal investigator since the 1990s, and I've grown across my fair share. And to be honest with you, sometimes, not all the time, sometimes they have an overlapping paranormal event or spiritual turbulence going on around them. But like you just described, you could go in there and help them out and clear it out, but you can't do anything about the mental health problem. So it's like, and then also what you were saying is, the invitation can, people think of an invitation as what we think of as like, as I invite you. But people, humans sometimes put out invitations in a lot of very weird ways that stuff like this will take you up on. Okay, as in expecting it, or like you said, watching a show and going, wow, wouldn't that be interesting? And the next thing you know, somebody takes you up on it.
I'm probably gonna get shot in the butt for this.
Go ahead.
Anyway. And I'm very vocal, and I don't hold anything back. I shoot from the hip. But there's just, and I put on my Facebook page today, there is so many dark stuff, so many people out there forgetting about the real messages that are supposed to be being delivered and the real white light, you know. It has turned into dark, and it's turned into demons. Everywhere you look, there's demons, you know, and that's not true.
Yes.
You know, and there are people here that work in the white light, and there are people that want to deliver the messages to the people that need it, because my way of thinking, somebody dies, well, that person has gone on to heaven or wherever, and then the person here on earth, well, the person is worried about their loved ones if they made it to heaven, and then the person in heaven is worried about the person worrying here on earth. So the messages need to get through. But if people stop, they don't think about that anymore. It's all about who can get a TV show, who can see the most demons, who's going to say, oh my God, I see something, somebody just touched me. You know, I mean, come on. Well,
you know what? And it's really funny because before, people were, I'm not going to say people didn't say they had a haunted house, but they were sometimes, you know, you kind of felt the stigma. And then we're talking here, regular dead people or even residual stuff. People were like, I don't want to talk about that because people think I'm weird. And now it's, no, that's just too ordinary. If I'm going to be haunted, I want the XXX, nth degree, most severe. And I'm thinking to myself, you really don't understand the concept, do you? You really don't know what comes with what you're talking about, despite what you see on the TV or the movies. That.
Now,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I have been told when I walk by people, they can feel the white light around me. Okay. I've had one woman in particular. I walked past her. She goes, "Oh my God, I just feel your white light." I had dinner shows at the Ohio State Reformatory up in Mansfield, Ohio, for 5 weeks, and that is supposed to be the most haunted place going. God. Well, I had a good time up there. I mean, I had the spirits. The spirits were really nice. Other people say, oh, there's demons and all this stuff. Well, I started walking down dark stairs. And my God, you can't see because it was a haunted house at the time. And I had a spirit. He came up to me and he says, "Ma'am, do you need help down the stairs?" And I'm like, "No, thank you. I'm okay." And he said, "Okay." And I mean, it was the real spirit. It was not a living person.
Okay.
And then later on, I had lilac perfume blown in my face.
Okay.
And I'm like, well, hello to you too. I found out later it was the warden's wife that had been killed there. Wow. And she was saying hello to me too. And I attract all the good ones, thank God. You know, I really haven't gotten in with any of the really bad spirits. I'm not saying they're not out there.
Right.
But I don't think they're out there as much as everybody's making them out to be. And I'm probably going to get a lot of backlash about that.
Well, you know what? The thing is that sometimes, you know, and I'm going to blame it on Hollywood. I'm going to blame it on movies and shows and stuff like that. But people don't realize that a lot of these shows, you know, at the end of the day, what they're trying to do is get an audience. And even if there is something there, all these people, they're there for maybe a week the most while they're doing a show, and then whatever happened, if they stirred something up, whether it was good, bad, or ugly, they leave.
Exactly.
They're gone. They're off to
Yep.
their next location. And people don't realize that when you start wanting this because you're bored, let's go with that, that when you all of a sudden start getting scared and want to back out of it, like saying, oh my God, that's just not the way it works sometimes. Because you've opened that door.
Exactly. And you can provoke people, spirits and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's because I have all the white light around me, or maybe
Right.
because I'm afraid of them, that they're there to talk to me. I've gone to Oklahoma again. I was working with the paranormal team out there.
Okay.
And I went in, it was a train station, and it was a guy from the 1980s, and him and a woman that, he liked, and she liked him and stuff. Well, he had some things to say to another psychic, a resident psychic medium,
Mm-hmm.
which he couldn't say to her because for some reason the communication wasn't working. I stood there as a mediator between the two of them, going back and forth and saying, what was going on. And that was good. I've had some people where I've had to do that before, and then they get into arguments, and I'm in the middle of an argument, and I'm like, hey,
you're like,
you
wait a
guys,
minute.
I'm not going to stand here and argue, But it's very interesting.
Well,
I love
sometimes
it.
people don't understand that. Let's say, like, we're not talking demonic. Let's say we're just talking a regular person that passed away that for some whatever reason got stuck. Whether they, sometimes these people for some reason they may be unhappy, or like you said, maybe they were ill and they're kind of still stuck in that death state, or there was something that they felt that didn't get done. And perception is your reality. You could look at and go, you mean you stayed behind because of that? But everybody's different. But the thing is that sometimes when you have these, when people pull in sometimes these spirits, all of a sudden, they maybe perhaps at the end of their lives, they were either unhappy, confused, or even sick human beings that still carry that energy with them. So basically bringing them around into your space where you live at, it's not really the wisest thing. That's why I tell people, especially when they, everybody wants to be a paranormal investigator or ghost hunter. It's like, that's great, but you really got to have really good boundaries about this.
Yeah, I had actually the same psychic medium, the resident one I was telling you about.
Mm-hmm.
Her daughter had gotten possessed, and she had to tell to go. And I've had spirits before that I've had to tell and go and stuff like that. But I'm not saying that all spirits are good. I'm not saying that they're all bad.
No.
I'm just saying that it seems like society today, they're going for, like you said, the shock and awe, and never mind the people that are hurting that need the real messages from people.
Oh, yeah, of course. But, and it's just something that it's a question of entertainment and, of course, money. That's what it boils down to. And it's like, even if it's kind of unrealistic or lopsided, that there's a lot of that going around, and they don't see the flip side of it, which is ultimately you're talking about a human soul. That
Exactly.
that's the most important thing to think about. And let me ask you, you mentioned that you had worked on missing person cases, and you just told me also that you had gotten a license as a private investigator. And I think that is so interesting because people don't realize sometimes people go missing and they're never found. And people don't really, it, as a matter of fact, it's not ever verified if there was foul play or if this person just just decided, hey, I'm going to leave. Nobody ever knows anything about them.
Right. And the reason I became a private investigator, well, actually I was kind of thrown into it, but I started thinking about it was because to be taken more seriously. Because they say psychic medium, they're a dime and a dozen, and half of them, 3/4 of them are fake. So we want a real person. So I figured with the private being a private investigator, and in Tennessee, I also own my own private investigator agency. So
Right.
I've got that going. And I'm really actually just starting it because I've only been licensed for 2 months.
Right.
So I have followed missing people just to see, followed up in the newspaper or online, whatever, to see if I'm right on what I pick up. And I'm 100% right.
That's great.
On everything that I pick. So I'm looking to get out there to bring people home, and that's what I had to tell the Tennessee Commission. I want to bring home all ages, because all ages go missing, not just little kids, but the elderly go missing too, and in between.
Yeah, I mean, even now, I don't know if they have it up where you're at, but we have those silver alerts, when they have, which is basically saying this is an elderly person and this is their make and the tag on the vehicle. And of course, we have people that walk out the front door sometimes because either if they have Alzheimer's or they're just old and they get disoriented. And sometimes a lot of people get taken advantage of when they're elderly.
Well, I had an uncle disappear when I was about 2 years old.
Wow.
And he was never found. And I believe he's dead. I don't think he's ever going to be found. But, they go out at all ages. It doesn't even matter. Like 40, 50, 30, 20, whatever. They disappear. And, people do need help in finding these people. And that's where I'm hoping to go with this.
Well, and people, I think, don't understand that there's something for, and there's some things, because sometimes people say, let's say like what you said about your uncle. Sometimes, even if it's just to tell the person or the family, this is what happened. This is what happened. Maybe they already know or suspected or kind of accepted that maybe this person is dead. Okay. But just the fact of actually knowing what happened to this person.
Yeah. Well, it's either bringing the person back or giving the family closure.
Yeah, exactly.
And I have a lot of people coming to me and saying, Mary, here, can you help find this person or whatever? And I'm like, well, I need the family to contact me. I just can't go do it, And I've heard of people that have been missing where psychic mediums will go knocking up their door. Hey, I'm a psychic medium. I can help you find your child or whatever.
Like, get off my doorstep right
and
now.
I'm like, I don't do that. I have a really good reputation, and if somebody wants me to investigate something, the person's got to come to me, because I'm not going to go ambulance chase, as you would say.
That's exactly, exactly. This has got to be something where that person or that family has arrived. Like this is what we want to do to find out. And thankfully now a lot of the medical examiners are taking, because I know in a lot of jurisdictions what they'll do is they'll hold the body maybe a year and then eventually they cremate it. But now thankfully what they're doing is they're taking DNA samples. So that they can, even years afterwards, they can match up, and the person with a family member, if the family member ever goes missing. And
I knew somebody who went missing. I didn't know about this until later, but he walked out of a place and dropped dead. And nobody knew who he was, and put him in a no-name grave. And his sister, a year later, started looking for him, and she found him. He was in that grave. So at least they have some kind of DNA that they could match up with it.
Well, I wrote up about this one time. I wrote a short article about it because, when I was said originally, sometimes people go missing, and nobody realizes how many unidentified people are found. And there was this one story of a girl, she was a teenager, runaway, abusive situation at home in Wyoming. She ends up here in Florida, up in like the Orlando area.
Right.
She's 17 years old. Unfortunately, hooks up, I want to say, with a guy who's in his 40s, which is, here she's doing, again, she's falling again into that pattern of violence and abuse. But make a long story short, she's crossing the I-4, which is a super busy highway. gets killed,
Yeah.
gets hit by a truck, I think it was. She didn't have any identification on her. Nothing at all.
Oh.
And this was back in the 80s. This was prior to the, DNA being a big thing. So
Right.
since she had just been killed recently, they were able to sketch her. It was not a mystery what she looked like. It wasn't skeletal remains. So they sketched her. They put out feelers. Didn't come up with anything as far as missing persons, etc., etc. Eventually, she was buried, like you said, in the potter's field, but the medical examiners, what they do now. And I don't know if you've heard of her. She used to have a show, Dr. G. She's a pathologist out of the Orlando area. She used to have a show. And no, I'm gonna, before I go there, many years later, she had a friend of hers from when she was a teenager back in Wyoming. One day, I guess, start thinking, I wonder what happened to so-and-so. And every once in a while, they would flash that sketch they'd taken of her face, like as a missing person. When they put out these missing people, unidentified.
Right.
This friend of hers,
Right.
which of course now she's an adult, starts thinking, I wonder what happened to her. I guess she was looking through some type of database, comes across the sketch and goes, man, that really looks like so-and-so.
Yeah.
She contacts the jurisdiction, the police department, where because they usually have call this number if you have any information or blah blah blah. Turns out
Right.
that it was, as a matter of fact, that lady, Dr. G, they exhumed her because this was prior to cremation. They actually, they were actually burying the bodies.
Exactly.
And the thing was, she was never cross-referenced because her family of origin in Wyoming hadn't even bothered to report her missing. That's why when she first got killed, she didn't match anybody. And if it wasn't for this friend who many years later decided to find out what happened to her friend,
Yeah.
nobody would have ever known what had happened to her.
Well, I'll tell you, sometimes parents do stupid things.
Mm-hmm.
I, through a friend, I was at a friend's house one time, and this 14-year-old girl comes banging at the door because she had a fight with her boyfriend, and she was having an anxiety attack. And to go, we ended up calling an ambulance for her,
Mm-hmm.
and she hooked on to me and wanted me to go in the ambulance with her and, be at the hospital and get an exam and all this stuff. And all the time I'm trying to reach her father.
Okay.
Her father let her come to meet this 19-year-old guy, and the girl was only 14. And I'm like, do you realize what could have happened to your daughter?
Yeah, exactly.
And he just didn't give two craps, and I'm like, I'd kill my daughter if she took off from one state to another to meet some guy at 14 years old.
Exactly. But it's like, and this is the thing, because sometimes, and I tell everybody, I know sometimes that, families, when they have these teenagers that are chronic runaways, sometimes they don't bother, because what happens is that when you put out a missing persons report on a juvenile, once they come back, the police has got to come back and eyeball them again. So the family's like, oh my God, I'm not going to go through that again. But once that person disappears, they eventually go, man, I haven't heard from so-and-so. So they do put out a missing persons report. And apparently her family had never done it, ever. Not even initially when she disappeared, or ever. There was no point where they said, hey, I haven't heard or seen or gotten a letter or a phone call from this person. So that was it. And that shows, of course, a lack of, like, almost similar to what you were describing about this girl who her dad just gave her a thumbs up. Yeah, go meet some stranger that's an adult and you're not.
It's funny because it happened in St. Pete, Florida. I used to live in Plant City. So, this was something. I couldn't believe it because they were from Iowa, or Iowa. I think it was Idaho. And I had to chase him down. He was in a bar.
Okay.
So, and then I had to tell him, what was going on. And then she had to have a female exam, and I ended up in there with her, too. And, I didn't even know the girl. I just felt sorry for her because she was 14 years old, and nobody was there,
Nobody cared
to help her.
Nobody cared.
And I mean, she ended up getting an STD from this guy, and her father was just very nonchalant about everything.
Nobody cared. That's what it was. Nobody cared.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why today we have so many kids that are out there on the street, either, hooking or drug addicts, or some that have been kidnapped. Look up in Ohio with the 3 women that were held for 10 years, and Jean Smart, all that, or not Jean Smart, but the Smart girl, but, all these girls, and human trafficking is happening to guys now, and it's happening to middle-aged people.
Yes, people, and what they don't know is that what they do, because they're real smart, despite, the databases and that now more police departments are on the same page, they kind of know that if they move, in other words, let's say if they're doing some type of trafficking and prostitution, they'll have them for a few months, let's say in Miami, for example. And before some task force is put together, they move them, let's say, to Atlanta, or they'll follow, if there's some big event going on in a city, they'll say, we'll go there and we'll be there a couple of weeks or a month, whatever. And then by the time the police catch up and say, hey, there's somebody that's, they move off someplace else. And that's how a lot of times they evade capture.
I feel like this generation is the entitlement in generation, because they think they're entitled to everything and it can't happen to them. It's worse than when we were kids.
Oh, yes. And I mean, as a matter of fact, and I tell everybody, when you're young, you always have that mentality, nothing bad can happen to you. And I think that happens to everybody. When you're young, nothing, that's hell, that's going to happen to, oh my God, when you would, when your parents tell you, don't do that, But sometimes I agree that some kids live too much in La La Land. I don't know if it's the proliferation of video games, or that sometimes maybe parents shelter them in the wrong ways. They don't care enough about what they're doing, but they don't let them also have a taste of the consequences of your actions. It's like a weird, dichotomy of one and the other. But and a lot of them are very impulsive. How's that? You get mad at your parents, and instead of going to your room and saying, I hate my parents, you run off. You run away. It's like, what are you doing? Hello? Do you understand what you're doing?
Now, when I was a teenager in the 60s and 70s, people would do that, but it was safe. They didn't really run away, really go anywhere.
Right.
But nowadays, it's just, it's ridiculous. And these kids they want to grow up too fast is what it is.
Right.
But,
and I also think that there's, besides the families that like that, the parent or parents that don't care, I think also,
but I've seen a lot of.
Yeah, there's a message of like, you don't need your parents. You don't, in other words, who are they to tell you what to do? Your parent? Hello, how's that? Yeah.
Yep, I agree with you on that one. But anyway, that's why I became a private investigator.
Let me tell you something. There's plenty to do. I'll tell you that much. There is plenty to do out there. And and I'm going to say, and I'm sure you've run across this, Mary, especially if you've worked with law enforcement. Most law enforcement agencies their caseloads are very high. So when they get given a runaway or possible missing person, sometimes it doesn't stay at the top of their list very long.
I know. I know, that's a shame. But they have so many. They've got so much bullcrap going on that I can actually see why. Yeah.
Oh, well, it's like, if you've got a murder or an assault or a robbery, and then you've got a person who, and this is what I tell them, if you've got, let's say, a kid that's maybe run away a couple of times, and you report it to the police, and the police, unfortunately, they're going to say, oh, okay, well, it's just a runaway, for example. Even though the parent will say, no,
Exactly.
there's something different. My child wouldn't stay away this long, or they would have called me. Let's face it, they're not going to give it the same urgency as.
That's true.
And you run
That's
across
very,
that.
very true.
Yeah, no, it's like I said, there's plenty out there, and also with and is we're from that same generation. We grew up with nobody had cellular phones. You had the only phone was at home.
Yeah, tied to a wall.
So before, right, it was tied to the wall, and I remember. There was a certain time no phone calls were expected at the house. Like if that phone rang, it was something was happening somewhere in the family. Like you were expected. Of course, when you're a teenager, you do that. Sometimes that weekend, I'm going to talk to but it wasn't the norm. For people to be calling. In other words, there was a time where you were shut down, and you were at home and you were with your family, and
Oh yeah.
And that doesn't exist anymore. And connections are made sometimes, unfortunately, between your kids. Especially, it doesn't even have to be a teenager, and wrong people pretending to be what they're not.
Yep, exactly.
And they lure them away. They lure them out of homes, out of, meet me here. Maybe it's something similar to what you were talking about. Sometimes a 19-year-old turns out to be a 29-year-old. So.
Right.
And yes, it is. Unfortunately, but it's just one of those things, and I'm sure each generation, when things are going on, they say it's never been as bad as this. But now, let me ask you: you also work with Reiki.
Yeah.
Do you incorporate that as far as
as
far as the energy work?
Yeah, and I consider it like an inside massage.
Okay.
Because, and I tell everybody, I am not a doctor. Of medicine. What I do is I go in, I see where you might be having problems, I identify them, I tell you them, and sometimes I'll go in there and try to kind of massage it to make it feel better, and if it's something you need to see a doctor about, you should see a doctor about it. And then when I'm in there, a lot of times I'll align and clear the chakras that help people that feel off balance and stuff like that. Usually their chakras need to be cleared.
Right. And that's what I was talking about originally, is sometimes, people manifest stuff physically. Don't get me wrong. I have nothing with...
Yeah.
But there's a spiritual component as far as the energy in our bodies, whether it's because of bad nutrition or just, God... sometimes people are stressed out and they're trying to multitask all the time, multitasking while they're multitasking.
But also, don't forget, a lot of times empaths, people who have all these feelings and stuff, they can't be around a lot of other people because they suck in their energy.
Oh my God, you are absolutely right about that. You are absolutely right about that. And people don't really, you're right. There's people that, I call them nails. There's nails so firmly to the earth, they could be around anything, and it's like, unless it's a 2x4 and it falls on their head, they're like, huh? And then there's other people that they're just more, they're like sponges. They pick up a lot, and they get affected, in other words, by just stuff going on around them. Or in some cases, if there's a person around them.
I'll tell you, people can feel my energy. Like, I'm from Pennsylvania originally. So we talk fast. And a lot of people think because we talk fast that we're excited about something or we're nervous about something. Well, it's funny because my son ended up in the hospital last weekend.
Okay.
And he had passed out, and we couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. Well, I was calm. I finally got calmed down, but my energy, everybody else could feel my energy bouncing off the walls. Now, this is a new one, because usually I'm bouncing off the walls, but I'm calm, but everybody else could feel my energy going crazy. And I had a friend tell me one time, she was a psychic, she goes, I can't read you until you can calm your energy down. And I can calm my energy down, but But now it's going wacky, and I don't even realize it. So, sometimes it's me just talking to somebody, or it's me being my Pennsylvania self with the, with the loud talking and the rushing talking and all that stuff. And I'm as clear as day and I'm calm as day. But now all of a sudden, my energy has taken a turn where it's bouncing off the walls and other people are feeling it and I'm not. And that's really weird.
Well, you know what? It also depends. I mean, there's a lot of things. It depends on the timing of things as far as what our energy or the person involved.
Right.
I hate to say it, usually when it has to do with children, with our children, even if, they're adults.
Exactly.
That's the one thing I think, because like I tell everybody, no matter how old they are, they're always your children.
Yeah. Well, we had him in the hospital because my daughter-in-law called and said he passed out. And then we got him to the hospital. He passed out again at the hospital and fell, bumped his head. Mm-hmm. But we found out it's a bleeding ulcer and a hernia. I mean, he's fine. Right. But while we were dealing with that, he was admitted to the hospital for 4 days. Right. My one daughter was visiting him, and she got sick and ended up in the emergency room. So I had one on the 7th floor and one in the emergency room. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but that's like a lot of times that, we can, you could say they're an adult and everything, but when it comes to our children, there's always something that you can't just like, you can't tell yourself, oh, calm down. I mean, you do, but not really, not truly.
My son is 30. Mm-hmm. He's married. He's got children, and he's about to have a baby. My daughter's 37, and she has 3 kids. And when they get worried or they get nervous or something's wrong, it's always Mom.
Of course.
Even though they're parents themselves,
Oh, yes, absolutely. I tell everybody, it doesn't, of course, and I still have the same, the same thing. I have 3 kids and they're all in their 30s, and it's the same thing when, it's like, well, Mom, I get that same call. Believe me, I've gotten that same call all the time. They're they're pretty independent. Don't get me wrong, but always when, they're always like, or I have one son, my youngest, he'll call me like he's just calling me like, oh, just how's everything, Mom, blah, 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 blah. And I know, okay, here it comes. And it's always somehow or other to ask my advice about something, but he doesn't want to come straight out and ask me, because it sounds like I'm asking my mother for advice. So he'll call me like on some pretext, like, just everything okay there? Yeah, everything is fine. Mm-hmm. And I'm waiting for it. Uh-huh. And then he'll say, well, this and this, and what do you think about that? And it's like, yeah. But I have to always couch it like I'm not telling him what to do either. So.
Yeah. Like my daughter will walk in and now I've had it. I have 5 kids and 3 of them were girls, and girls are harder to raise than boys. And now my daughter's come to me about my 15-year-old grandson and his love life, and I'm like, oh my God.
I know.
It's just funny. It's like, I want to be 15 again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and of course, when you're 15, everybody's in a real hurry to be grown up and be adults. And it's like, and it's really funny because you will have adults that will tell you, oh, don't worry, and you're like, no, I need to be an adult and drive and have a job, and it's all right. Believe me, you'll get plenty of that eventually.
Oh yeah, and then you're gonna want to wish you were 15 again and letting your parents handle everything.
Sure, yeah. Even though nowadays it's the other way. I'm not gonna say because my kids are pretty good, because like my youngest, he went to the Navy right out of high school, and the others, I told them, if you're going to school. But nowadays we have, I'm sure we've all heard about, sometimes the kids nowadays, they want to stay at home forever. It's like,
I know somebody like that. Yeah.
It's like, yeah. You mean have to worry about a Ross and paying the rent, and why? If I've got my mom and my dad, or that whole handle that for me. So yeah, that comes back to what you were saying originally about sometimes the parents they overdo it when it comes to taking care of being, letting go of you have to let the responsibility hit them on the head a little bit when they're
Oh,
younger,
yeah.
so that they don't.
Yep.
At some point, they're like, okay, you have to be an adult. Bye. And fly, little bird, fly, like I say. But anyway, Mary, I wanted to thank
Yeah.
you so much for being a guest. You have been absolutely wonderful. And for my podcast audience, what is your website address if they wanted to go ahead and get in touch with you?
Okay, it's www.mary, M-A-R-Y, Barrett, BARRETT.org.
.org. Okay, perfect. And I'll have a link to the website on the credits of the show. But again, if they want to contact you for whatever services, and if you have any events, I know you have the books, and now if you're also, I imagine if you are you going to, because you're licensed only for your state, you're only going to work within the state that you're at, right? As far as if anybody needs that type of help. No,
Actually, we reciprocate with other states.
Oh, you are perfect.
And we can also get permission from that state that we don't have it with. So yeah, I can go anywhere pretty much, I believe. So if anybody needs any help like that, all they have to do is call.
Perfect. Okay, so you all have it, They can give you a call or contact you via email and find out, if you can help them out. Whether it's through the private investigation or any of the other things that you do, which I hate to say. I'm sorry, go ahead.
My investigation has a different website.
Oh, then what's that?
Did you want that?
Yeah.
It's www.ALIMENTIPI.com.
Okay.
Elementary PI.
Okay. All right. And let me ask you, just in case if anybody wants, will you have a link from your regular website over there, or no?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. Just in case for anybody, either way, that wants to, for whatever reason, contact you, and maybe you could tell them, explain to them, maybe, because sometimes people are a little bit confused as to really what they want or what they need, as far as in cases where whether it's something personal for them or a family member, or like you said, that sometimes people don't realize that you have to actually get that request directly from either a parent or a family member before you can move forward on something like that.
Well, exactly. And I do have a link up on my Barrett to my PI one. So it's right on the first page.
Perfect. Excellent. All right, Mary, thank you so much. You have been wonderful. God, you do so many things. You must be a real busy lady, let me tell you.
Yeah, sometimes. Thanks for asking me to be on. It's been great.
It has been
nice
my
meeting
pleasure.
You too.
Likewise. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Wow. Let me tell you something. I'm not kidding. She must really be busy. Because the thing is this. People don't realize that because sometimes people think of being either psychic or paranormal investigators, and sometimes there's a lot of people in the field that also branch out into other fields. Okay, and this is how can I say it? Especially when it comes to something that's painful, like missing person. Some people shy away from that. They don't realize, or how can I say it? Yes, everybody always thinks of the missing. Let's go with the PI stuff, which believe me, the psychic abilities helps. But most people don't realize that even if you're psychic, you can still put that aside, because let's face it, to get things done, you have to work in the real world, whether it's with a police department or the jurisdiction or interviewing people, depending on how old this case is. I mean, a lot of things, you know, in other words, you have to be able to communicate. All right, you just can't sit in your house and go, And sometimes that's what families want. You know, maybe they do want a psychic impression from you, but then where do we go with this? And I wasn't kidding. Sometimes, and I'm sure you've seen some shows where they say where if the cases become cold, or if it was somebody that had a history of running away, or there was somebody that disappeared without any signs of violence, okay? And if it's an adult, especially, because believe it or not, there is no law against a person just deciding, I don't want to live in this place anymore. There's nothing there that says you have to give a written notice and tell people, hey, I am leaving. I'm moving to the other side of the country. You can. You could just decide, I don't want to live here anymore, and I'm not going to tell anybody. So, but the point being that sometimes police departments, unless there's a big red arrow that says, hey, there was some type of crime that took place, or this is really unusual for this person to do, or eventually, maybe initially they'll pay attention, but they got so many cases sometimes that are really on the face of them demanding that it's inevitable. Sometimes these cases get pushed to the side, especially as one day goes by, another day goes by, another day goes by. You know, and to the poor family or parent or whoever's involved, this is just as fresh as it was the first day. And sometimes, you know, they could you know, badger the police department, but sometimes they realize one of two things. If it's kind of fresh, they know that time is of the essence, okay? Or if time has passed by, sometimes even years, whether they suspect or think that this person might have even is deceased, could be for a lot of reasons. Could be this person was involved in a risky lifestyle. Could be because they know this person would never up and just disappear, and we never hear from this person. Something had to happen. Even if they kind of suspect it, know it, anticipate it, they still want to know. Okay? They still want to know what happened to this person. Can we find this person? Did somebody do something bad to them? Did anybody get arrested? And so they go to somebody, let's say like Mary, who can, give them maybe a psychic impression. But then what? You know? Or let's say you go to a psychic and they'll tell you, no, your daughter or your son, they're still alive. They're still, but I feel they're out on the West Coast. Okay, and? You know, sometimes families want more than a feeling. Okay, they want like, hey, I need somebody to go out there and do the legwork. To interview people, find out what's going on, make a connection with the police department. Okay, you'd be surprised sometimes families, they are not aware of that. You know, all these police departments have a list of unidentified victims that they've come across, because believe me, there are a lot of people that are remains that are found that are never identified. Okay, even whether it's skeletal remains, like I said, now they're taking DNA samples, so even if the remains are cremated, they still have something that if they have to, they can, you know, cross-reference it with, you know, whether it's skeletal remains or somebody that was recently killed or died. Sometimes people do die. Sometimes people get really sick and they go to a hospital and they die. And they don't really know who this person is. So the point being that nowadays there's a lot of people that things happen to them. And if it's just even a little bit far away from where they live at, they can fall through the cracks. And then the families, or whoever it is, might be a friend, they go to somebody like Mary, who does the legwork or finds out, you know, whether through psychic impression or through phone calls, talking to the police. What do you got? looking at databases of missing people, see if there's a matchup. Things like that to narrow the field down. Not every... Sometimes people are found alive, believe it or not. There's a lot of times people have disappeared. And I'm not talking only young runaways. I'm talking about full-grown people have disappeared, and everybody's thinking they're dead, and they're not. They're just alive and have another life. They decide to do that. And even when that's the case, that family at least knows, okay, this person was a real, who knows, for whatever reason, maybe they're not. And decided to just leave, but at least we know that person's alive. And they're making their way in life. Or, as a matter of fact, there was another story. This was a couple of years ago that it came out. Same thing, very similar to what I described. Young guy. He was, I think he was originally from Mississippi. And, 17. This was back in the 70s. Okay? And he was, I guess, kind of crazy, hanging with the wrong crowd. Would run away, come back. Not really even run away. He was just doing stuff he shouldn't have, stupid stuff, hanging out with the wrong people. And I believe he had been arrested for something minor, but he was even like in juvenile prison. He gets out. I can't remember if he got out or if he escaped, something like that. I think he had just gotten out. He was 17. He's in Texas. Same thing. He's running across this big highway in Texas, in the middle of Texas. Gets killed by a car. Okay. And I want to say this was right after he had gotten out. Has no ID on him. I mean, I remember reading that his belt was a rope. He had a rope, instead of a belt on his pants. Gets killed. Same thing. They make a really, really good sketch of his face. Okay. They put up all these different, business back in the 70s, flyers, everything, hoping somebody's going to step forth, identify him. They kind of cross-reference it. Again, remember, this is not as interconnected as it is before as far as a missing people database. Can't find anything. This happened like in a little town in Texas where the jurisdiction that it fell into, people were nice enough, like in that community, that everybody chipped in and they buried him. Unidentified guy. Believe it or not, I want to say, 40-something years later, and I can't remember, I'm sorry, I can't remember the ladies' names. Some of these ladies that worked at the police department and another organization that work with putting together the people like that, people that are deceased and never identified, they finally found him. He had been reported missing by his family in Mississippi way back in the 1970s. I mean, in other words, his family, he was kind of a crazy kid, but every time he would do crazy stuff, he would always stay in touch with his family. He would know, hey, in other words, he would either pop up someplace or he would make a phone call his mother. Then, of course, after that incident, that was it. They never heard from him again. And they got an answer 40 years later about what had happened to him. And I believe the family decided just to leave him stay buried. Of course, I believe they changed the tombstone. And they gave him his name and everything. And, but my point being that sometimes because of the sheer number of people that go missing, or remains that are found, that there's just no way to trace them. And then the volume of crimes that police departments deal with, these cases just fall on the wayside. And the more time goes by, stuff that's recovered puts in a box, shoved somewhere. I've heard of sometimes even evidence rooms throwing stuff out, or places even being burnt down, and the evidence or whatever it was that was collected, if they ever do collect anything, it's gone. And I think that's, of all the situations, that would be one of the most horrible, of never ever knowing what happened to this person. Okay, even if in your mind you're thinking, I know that this person is deceased. But again, and I imagine some, I mean, I know of private investigators, and they're not psychic, but I'll tell you what, they won't admit it out loud, but a lot of them would absolutely take input from a psychic or from somebody that's sensitive, because they realize, they believe me, and they've worked enough situations where sometimes, and contrary to, not like what she's saying, where people show up on your doorstep and offer their services for a certain fee. It's like, no, that's not going to happen. That's not good either. And I'm glad she pointed that out. Whereas I am not going to go out there, like she said, ambulance chasing. This has got to be something that family or that parent or whoever it is wants and comes to me, and then I explain, and then they, in other words, they've come to that point, that decision, that this is what they want. Or that they, maybe the police department just is fresh out of leads. Okay, or maybe it's been a lot of years. It could be a lot of different stuff. And I'm not kidding. There's always been a big danger for runaways. Don't get me wrong. That's not a modern thing. Okay? Runaways have always been the targets for predators and for people trying to take advantage, especially if you're young and you have nobody to take care of you, or you're mad, or God knows, maybe you've got stuff going on at home. They recognize that makes a young person very, very vulnerable, which makes them easy to manipulate. But that being said, nowadays people don't have any idea how much human trafficking and smuggling, it's a lot of money. A lot of money is made with that. Prostitution, and by this I mean boys and girls, okay, all ages. And you're disposable, because you know what, they know that when this person is not useful for whatever reason, there's plenty others I can get. It's like no big deal. And if you think about it, who you're dealing with in all these that are all psychopaths and sociopaths. Okay? Psychopaths and sociopaths. In other words, they have no mercy. They don't care. They don't see you as a human being. They just see you as a commodity to be used. And when you're not useful, and as in you're not bringing them any more money, they get rid of you. People sometimes think, oh, well, they let you go. No, they don't let you go and walk on your way. One of two things happens. Either you die, because God knows, maybe you develop a drug habit, you got sick, or if that's not the case, but you're not used, they kill you. People think, oh, at some point, no, they kill you. What, so you could talk about everything you saw while you were being shuttled around the country, maybe being prostituted, or you saw things that were going on, or the locations of little brothels that they got. You think they're going to let people like that walk away? Absolutely not. The most you're going to get is that sometimes, and this is a rare exception, is they'll groom maybe a young prostitute to become a madam or an enforcer. Madam is a nice word, an enforcer for them. And when they go a little bit older, like, okay, you know what? I'm going to leave you in charge of this house, and you're going to rule it with an iron hand. So because I need to go, maybe you're a pimp, or you're going from house to house, so you need somebody there at that location that's going to run that place like a boot camp. And a lot of them are ruthless, because they you know what, they feel, first of all, they feel very special because now they're on the other side of the equation. Plus, they don't want to go back to having sex with a multitude of people, so they'll do anything to be on the other side of that. So sometimes they can be horrible as enforcers, but otherwise, no, you don't walk away from stuff like that. And people don't realize that and everybody always thinks, oh yeah, because of the serial killer stuff, because there's so much that you hear about serial killers. Let me tell you something, a lot more fall victim to these prostitution rings than serial killers. Okay, so then serial killers, there's no exit when you're there, unless the cops bust down the door and they are able to get everybody out of there. But outside of that, or unless you're one of the few that for some reason gets smart and one day actually runs away very, very far. But unfortunately, that's the rare occasion when that happens. But anyway, guys, I think speaking to her was super interesting. And I think that, like everything else in the paranormal world, the real world and the paranormal or the scientific overlaps in a lot of different ways. Again, I'm going to have a link to Mary's website on the credits of the show, and you already heard what her website is. I urge you to check it out. Whatever, she I'm sure that depending on maybe you need just a reading with her, or maybe you need something else. It sounds like she's a very understanding lady, that she can help you out and point you in the right direction, or tell you, this is what I can do for you. So thanks, guys, for being part of this audience. You are all wonderful, and thank you for coming back every week. See you next week, which, by the way, I have a lot of great guests coming on. Take care.